Pac-Man is one of the most recognizable mascots in gaming history. While most would know him from his classic arcade maze game, during his 40 odd years on this planet, Pac-Man has gotten around. Among the countless recreations of the formula he is popular for, Pac-Man has also spun off into different genres like kart races, endless runners, point-and-click adventures, this Mario Party ripoff, apparently 4 different battle royale games, and whatever the hell this is.
The Pac is back, yeah!
It'd probably be easier to say what things Pac-Man hasn't done, but today I just want to look at one game. Well, actually 2 games, but mostly just the one game, and that is Pac-Man World 2. Pac-Man World 2 is the second entry, of course, in the Pac-Man World trilogy. This trilogy were adventure platformers, with the first game being released for the original PlayStation in 1998, for Pac-Man's 20th anniversary. The first Pac-Man World game is a staple of my childhood. It is an absolutely fantastic game that I never actually finished due to not having a memory card for the longest time. And I only ever finished after the remake of it came out in late 2022. The original Pac-Man World felt like it was capitalizing on the popularity of Crash Bandicoot. And, well, yeah, it is, but it does enough to stand on its own merits. The original is a weird game. It does the usual adventure game stuff of having hubs that are all different level themes with a boss at the end. The level themes in this game feel like they were all drawn out of a hat. It starts with pirate levels, then the ruins, then space, then this carnival nightmare, then a factory, and then a graveyard. Here's the thing though. The first Pac-Man World game really excels at nailing the atmosphere of pretty much every one of these themes. First in part due to the excellent art design, and secondly it's aided by the absolutely fantastic soundtrack. The space levels are by far the best example of this, but really the whole soundtrack is just iconic. Todd Dennis, who is credited as the composer of the original soundtrack, did an amazing job. And I'm going to ignore the studio he was working for because that is a rabbit hole that not even a 2-hour video essay can cover all the madness associated with it. So Pac-Man World was a success. 2.5 years and a console generation later, we would get its sequel for the PlayStation 2, Pac-Man World 2. Eventually it would be released for the GameCube, Xbox, and apparently PC as well, which I did not know about until I started writing the script. Last time I did a nostalgia tour video, I talked about Crash Bandicoot and how the PS2 era of his video games were of a lesser quality if you compare it to the PlayStation 1 games. The new generation did not bring better quality games. So how did Pac-Man handle the generational jump? Well, let's take a look. Pac-Man World 2 starts off as most games do in this era with an FMV cutscene. I think I mentioned this in the Twinsanity video as well, but these are really just like a product of their time. Opening cutscene for Pac-Man World 2 and the one at the end of the game are both really decent. The intro in particular has a lot of goofy slapstick humor and it's just a bit of fun. We're then taken to the main menu of the game. It's serviceable, but the first thing that jumped out to me was the music. Let's get this out of the way while it's still semi-fresh in our mind. The music, again, is fantastic. And this time we have a different composer, David Logan. They do a great job. I don't want to repeat myself, so anything I said for the first game, it applies in the second. The soundtrack for Pac-Man World 2 feels a lot more action-oriented compared to the last one, which was more atmospheric. And speaking of atmospheres, the level themes for these games are Green Hills, Deep Forest, Icy Mountain, Volcano, Underwater, and Dank Swamp. The themes are a little more cliche, but this game has some tricks up its sleeves. What it lacks for in variety of themes, it makes up for in the variety of its gameplay. The game really likes to start switching it up a lot, especially towards the end of the game. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself though. We'll come to that. The game begins with a little hub level that acts as kind of like a beginning tutorial and kind of a bit of a playground to test out the controls and the feel of the game. The Pac Village is charming, but if you opt to run straight to the end, you'll hit the Pac-Man theme play, celebrating finishing the level like you actually accomplished something. Which is kind of hilarious. From here we can see the hub structure from the last game is non-existent, opting for a more straightforward linear map approach. It's function over form. I kind of liked the last one better, but it's nothing really to complain about. The map does kind of help accentuate the fact that we're going on this grand adventure though. And it also helps separate itself from some of the comparisons to Crash Bandicoot, which it kind of needed to do. Mostly because, like, if you finish a level in this game, it unlocks the ability to do a time trial. which is new to this franchise, but had been a staple of the Crash franchise for about 4 years now. I seriously didn't come into this review wanting to compare the game to Crash Bandicoot so much, but it's something I actually never really noticed until I started writing the script for this video. Anywho, moving on. The second level of the game is just kind of more of a tutorial, whereas the first level was teaching you the basics like, you know, health, lives, what the fruit and the pack dots do. This one teaches you more about the controls, you know, when you're going to use the rev roll, butt bounce, and, you know, it's pretty straightforward platformer stuff. To complete a level, all you need to do is reach the end, and most of the time that's a pretty linear task. But if you're trying to 100% complete the level, well, that's a whole different task. Most levels will have fruits to collect. These are usually easy, you won't have to go too far out of your way to get these. Then there are the arcade tokens. These are bonus collectibles that unlock like the old arcade Pac-Man games that you can play from the first hub level, and they also unlock concept art as well. There are around 8 arcade tokens scattered throughout a level. Most are usually hidden or sitting in a dangerous spot, and you also get one for 100% completing a level and another for completing the time trial. But to 100% complete a level, you also need to collect all the pack dots, and this is some real bullshit. Like pack dots, they're not that hard to collect, but it's also so unbelievably easy to miss one of these little suckers and then, haha, fuck you, now do it again. The first level might have like 120 odd pack dots to collect, and you know, that's not so bad. But this like gets to an absurd amount as the game goes on, and the final level has like 535 dots to collect, and me, trying to do the last level, 100% it, I got 476. There is no way I'm going to try that shit again. This is like Crash 4 levels of ridiculousness. Like, if you're familiar with the Crash genre, you collect all the boxes to get a gem, but in Crash 4, they like upped the amount of boxes per level to like an insane amount, and like most of there's just usually one box hidden in a spot you usually can't see, and it's just so dumb. This is what it's like. Pac-Man World 2 did it first. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Again, the level-to-level gameplay of Pac-Man World is pretty good. The controls are tight, but unfortunately this game falls victim to the shitty camera controls of this era of gaming. And I would say this is the game's biggest problem. The camera is too limiting and finicky, and it makes times with already hard platforming much, much harder than it needs to be. The camera perspective also makes it fairly difficult to collect anything that's like floating in the sky as well. I want to take a look at the second lot of worlds. Now, I called this a deep forest earlier. That's because I don't really know how else to describe this theme. It takes place entirely on top of a rainforest, but I will say that this is easily the best bunch of levels in the game. The levels layout is well crafted, the difficulty feels balanced, and due to the openness of the level, the camera feels more free and the jank of it becomes very minimal. The music as well is just also excellent. The overall design of the level is actually just really unique. I really do love this level, or this lot of levels, and it's one of the very few things that I like still remembered about this game before I replayed it for this review. Similar to the space level from the first game, this is where I feel like all the parts of the development team are just working perfectly in sync. Moving on to the Ice Mountain levels, I will say these are pretty well done too. I will say they're probably the second best like bunch of levels in the game. The first level has us working our way up an icy mountain path, which is a cool design. It really finds a way to get more use out of the rev roll ability. And there's also this really cool moment where we run away from an avalanche that yeah. Alright, I'm kind of sick of comparing this game to Crash Bandicoot, and I'm sure you're sick of me doing it. So let's just get this shit out of the way. Once again, I didn't come into this review wanting to compare this game to Crash. I have to be honest when I say that this game is like 80% Crash Bandicoot. There's no avoiding that. It is what it is. But it's the little things that Pac-Man World 2 does that makes it stand out as not just a clone. While the linear level layouts are very similar to Crash, Pac-Man World's gameplay often requires a little more puzzle solving and backtracking through the levels, especially for collectibles. Funnily enough, when you're doing the completionist stuff in this game, going through and finding everything in the levels can make it feel like a bit of a maze, which I'm not sure if is entirely intentional, but it helps sell the Pac-Man theme, really. And even if you were to look at this game solely through the lens of just being a Crash Bandicoot clone. It does Crash Bandicoot better than Crash was doing his own games during this era. This game came out 4 months after Wrath of Cortex, a game which is mediocre at best and boring at its worst. And Pac-Man World 2 is amazing at its best, but it's also frustrating at its worst. The frustration of this game mostly comes from the huge difficulty curve this game goes through. Now, if you're playing through this game normally, the game gets pretty hard. If you're going through the completionism stuff, then it's just ridiculous. This is mostly due to the fact that the game likes to switch it up a lot during the second half of the game. Starting with the ice skating level, it's pretty fun. The controls are decent, but if you miss one of those tiny little pack dots while smashing it down this mountain, well, try again. It's also very easily to miss a kickflip on these boxes to get a fruit. Once again, you can't turn around and go back, so try again. From here on out, the game is about half-half traditional platforming levels and gimmicky levels. This is what I mean by it switches it up. And I feel like the game was all platforming. From here on out, it would get very stale. Which is what I like about Pac-Man World, when it just, it does know when to actually switch it up. And look, the gimmicky levels are all very fun, but usually they require absolute perfection for a full completion, which is, once again, frustrating. After the Ice Mountain levels, we reach the Volcano Cave levels, and this is where the game really does start to get very difficult. Any screw up in these levels usually means instant death. I do love the level though where you descend through the volcano by lowering the lava. It usually requires you to go through like a little, or do a puzzle and then make your way back, and then you go down. It is really cool design. I don't really have that much more to say about these levels. This one's probably the best one, but they're all very difficult. So moving on to the water levels in this game. Unlike water levels in many games, I actually kind of really like these ones. Once again, shout out to the music composers for absolutely nailing the atmosphere here. Most of these levels are essentially auto-scrollers, but the controls are very tight and very good. The submarine level is just insane, mostly because the game throws so much crap at you, it just becomes impossible to see anything. Which all comes to a climax with a pretty decent boss fight with all 4 of the ghosts in the submarine. I haven't actually talked about the bosses. Let's rewind a bit. The bosses in this game are the iconic 4 ghosts, Blinky, Inky, Pinky, and Clyde, which we actually fight in that order. Blinky, he has a mechanical frog, and he's the first boss, and he's very, very easy. He and pretty much every one of the bosses just tell you in plain text how to beat them. Actually beating them, though, can be very challenging. Well, not with Blinky, but the other 3. And the game is very lenient when it comes to checkpoints. Boss fights are more or less the same fight, and the mechanics are just slightly different in each one, but mostly being all the same. Inky throws buzzsaws at you. Pinky, of course being the only female ghost, has an unhealthy crush on Pac-Man. This is 2002. Why did I expect anything different? Don't remember what makes this one unique, to be honest. Clyde, though, seems to be the only semi-competent ghost out of all of them, which tracks because his fight is easily the hardest. He shoots fireballs, and when they land on the arena, they leave a, fire. And fuck this guy. This guy's fucking hard. Which brings us to the submarine fight. I like it. It is such a refreshing change of pace from the previous 4 fights, which were, let's be honest, a little lazy. Thematically, it's fun, though. The final stretch of levels has us rollerblading on a falling pier. Easily the level that took most of my lives, because this level is so incredibly unforgiving. I can't believe this game was made for kids. You don't actually get to do too much rollerblading here. It is mostly jumping and praying that the chunks of the pier don't screw you over with how they fall. The level after the pier is one I thought was part of the volcano levels and had forgotten about until I was rewatching my footage. So we'll put this one down as forgettable. Which brings us to the final level of the game, Ghost Bayou. This fucking level. When you enter the level, you're greeted by some evil tree. Our objective is to reach him. The level is actually just a huge, swampy maze. Throughout the level, the evil tree will give you challenges and puzzles, which aren't hard, but most of the level takes place on like a little narrow path, and if you touch the swampy water, you die instantly. Going back over this footage, this level took me 30 minutes to beat. I've never felt so stupid playing a video game in my entire life. I felt like I was lost for so much of this level. I can't believe my 8-year-old self could beat it. Like, here I am 20 years later struggling. I reckon if I went back in time and challenged that little shit to a speedrun of this game, he'd fucking beat me too. So if we reach the end of the level, the evil tree just decides to fucking die, And it really pisses off the main antagonist of the game, despite the fact it feels like that really wasn't our fault. Which leads us into the final boss fight. Pac-Man gets a power-up because we collected all the golden fruit or something, and there was something in the beginning of this game about a prophecy of a knight or some shit. The story is very stock standard. You don't get much out of it. Like I said earlier, the FMV cutscenes are great, but anything outside of those isn't really worth caring about. The final fight, it's a good challenge, it's fun, it does everything a final boss should do. The only thing I can really, criticize against this boss fight is that it might not be as hard as the Clyde boss fight. Even then though, this boss fight is really cool. The whole aesthetic of the fight has a cool Eye of the Storm, kind of Wizard of Oz, things are whirling around you in a tornado, which I really like. And I do like that the way to do damage to this boss is just to fucking kickflip him. Which brings us to the end of the game. And Pac-Man World 2, huh? I used to absolutely love this game as a kid. So, does it hold up 20 years later? Absolutely. I feel like the visuals are the only thing that do not really stand the test of time here, which is totally forgivable. This was very early on in the PlayStation 2 life cycle, and I feel like a lot of games just hadn't quite nailed what they were supposed to do with the new graphical fidelity of the time. And look, if that's the only thing that's, aged, this game absolutely does stand the test of time. And a normal playthrough of this game, it is really fun. I don't recommend anyone go for 100% completion of this game. I think it will probably drive you nuts. If I was stuck on a desert island, that's probably the only way I would give that challenge a go. Like I mentioned before, in 2022, Bandai Namco released a remake of the first Pac-Man world, which is absolutely fantastic. They also released remasters for the Klonoa games as well. So it seems like Bandai Namco are at least very interested in capitalizing off the games from this era. I don't really know how successful they were, but I'm really hoping that someday they'll do a remaster of Pac-Man World 2. But I really would love to see a modern reimagining of the game, because this game is really underrated, especially for its time. I'm not sure how well it did. It was enough to get a third game out of it, which we're not going to talk about because it's not good. I really do think that this might be one of the best adventure platformers of its generation. Alright, so that's all I have to say about Pac-Man World 2. Thank you so much for watching. It was really cool to revisit this game. I was really hoping to be a little more consistent with the Nostalgia Tour series, but here we are, second episode, 6 months after the first one. At this rate, I'll be finished with the first season in 2026. Anywho, if you like this video, please leave a thumbs up, and if you are new, subscribe. I will see you all in the next one.